All right. Hello there. What's up, Story Geeks? Thanks for joining us today on the Story Geeks YouTube channel. I'm Nick Duke. I'm your captain for this flight. And today we're talking about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and experiential storytelling. Joining me today, Story Geeks co-host Jay Shearer and Nataly Guzman. There they are.
We are here. We are here. Thank you for having us.
Hey, guys. And we also have a special guest today, co-host of the 3228 podcast and the Wedway radio podcast, Matt Parrish. Are you there, Matt?
I'm here. Thank you very much.
Hey, good to have you.
I've told Matt this before, but Matt is one of my favorite podcasters. So it is always a pleasure to chat with him about Galaxy's Edge or whatever it is we're talking about. What did we talk to you about last time, Matt? We talked to you about Pixar?
Yeah, Pixar. And you have one of my favorite beards in the podcast.
I appreciate that.
Enviable beard. It moved away from the top of his head to be closer to the dulcet tones of his voice.
Yeah. That's something I'll never live up to, unfortunately.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Really.
So thanks for listening in, everybody. The Story Geeks podcast is produced by the Reclamation Society. Make sure you subscribe. And for more in-depth perspectives on geek content, make sure you subscribe and visit our site. We have a ton of good stuff. So today we're talking about Galaxy's Edge within the Star Wars universe, also Batuu, Black Spire Outpost. So in 2015, Disney CEO Bob Iger announced that Disneyland and Disney World would be getting a new addition, a whole new 14-acre land completely dedicated to one of their biggest franchises, Star Wars. So you won't be seeing Cinderella walking around there. And we knew from the beginning it was going to be immersive. You're going to be on this outer rim planet. Batuu is right on the edge of wild space, as they call it in the Star Wars universe. So let's go back. So, one of the most important elements of engaging in a story is your emotional response. What were your initial emotional reactions when Disney announced that they would be developing this new land? And did you have certain expectations when you heard about it? What about you, Jay?
Oh, man. Going back, this is the thing, right? Like whenever Disney announces a new thing, I'm generally speaking super excited about it. But at the same time, this is one of those things where you're like, I think Disney will do a fantastic job at this. But we were still in the what's Disney exactly going to do with Star Wars phase when this was being announced. Obviously, we'd already seen the first sequel trilogy film. But the fandom was not, at that point in time, the fandom was not like rallying together. The fandom was like a little bit divergent.
Fractured.
Yeah, fractured at that point in time. And so you kind of just wonder, like, what are they going to do? And part of it was, as they started talking about it more and more, and I don't remember all of the different releases, but as they started talking about it more and more, it was, it's not going to be Star Wars land. It's going to be this really immersive experience. And so you're kind of going, well, does that mean it's going to feel more like the prequel trilogy or the sequel? Like, what exactly is going on in this land? And so I as excited as I was about it, because I've been a huge Star Tours fan ever since I was a little kid. And it was like, you can put me in Star Wars, like put me in every Star Wars, please. But I was always a little bit, I was holding back a little bit because I wasn't really sure. And of course, I love Disneyland. So for me, anytime there's a change to Disneyland, I'm excited about it. But at the same time, I'm like, well, what's it going to be like? And what are they taking away from me, So yeah, that was kind of my initial response.
What about you, Nataly?
Yeah, I was expecting an announcement like this. Like when I heard, even going back further to 2012, when it was announced that Lucasfilm was purchased by Disney, I was immediately of course, we're going to get more films, and of course, we're going to get maybe more attractions or a land. And I anticipated an announcement like this, but I anticipated it for Orlando. I never in my mind imagined something like this specifically at the Disneyland Resort here. It's just such a tiny amount of space that's left.
Right.
So I remember I was in the room. I was in at D23 Expo during that specific panel where Bob Iger was up on that stage and he dropped the announcement. And the first part of the announcement was what I anticipated. We're getting this immersive experience at Walt Disney World at Disney Hollywood Studios. And when he said, we're not getting one, but we're getting two. And that's where I was like, no way. And when he announced right across the street at Disneyland, my actual first instinct reaction was where? Like right before the excitement kicked that question out of my mind, it was where. And after that, though, I was over the moon. And I know what Disneyland means to so many people. I know that this announcement was met with a lot of apprehension, not just from Star Wars fans, but from Disneyland fans. We are a very special bunch to be a fan of Disneyland. But I know that Imagineers know that too. They understand how special Disneyland is to both Star Wars fans and those that have never seen the movies. I believe that there is a perfect and strong connection with Disneyland and Star Wars. George Lucas was there on opening day. So I think there's no better place to put this story than where George Lucas probably had his imagination inspired by being a big fan of Rocket to the Moon. Star Tours for me is also one of my favorites. I'm a big Star Tours fan like you, Jay. And that was actually my first Star Wars anything. When I was a kid, I'd never seen the movies before getting on that attraction. So
really?
My first,
oh no way,
yes, that's actually how I was introduced to the Star Wars universe.
That's cool.
When I eventually watched A New Hope and watched the trench run scene, I actually said, "Hey, I've been there before." So I know that like that emotional connection for me goes full circle, connecting the films and Disneyland. So I personally was over the moon, not just at a Star Wars experience, but for it to be specifically at Disneyland.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't imagine like never experiencing Star Wars, and the first time you do experience it is this like insane, like immersive, like at the time is the most immersive thing in Star Wars wise that you could do is Star Tours, which is is not too far away from just sitting in a theater. It's just this time the seats move, you know.
Yeah. This time it makes you sick. Like, that's
yeah.
I think the best way to imagine little me writing that for the first time is Grogu in the last episode, a couple of episodes, throwing up his little macaron. That was probably about 4 or 5 years old writing that for the first time.
That's awesome. What about you, Matt? How did you feel when it was announced?
Yeah, so I don't know that this was a time when I was really paying attention to news. So I'm trying to think if I even remember the day when I learned it. Well, in retrospect, quickly, what's crazy is that the announcement, you know, Nataly was talking about the announcement 2015, like how firm they held to the plans that they actually unveiled in 2015 that they, you know, actually constructed by 2019. That still blows my mind.
Yeah, they even had T-shirts with like the launch date on it.
yeah. And
that
so
that
was bold, right? And I think that they, in some aspects, like if I just turn my head back, like I felt like at the time they also announced that they would, you know, they were going to put a trilogy out. So we knew that by then. And I thought that's a lot, right? So you've got 3 films you have to put out in the next, 4 years, and then 2 lands, you know, on both coasts. And I probably a lot like you guys, I was just confused as to where that would go and how that would meet with the sort of larger construct of Disneyland, being that it's been, you know, for so long has fairly well held true to its sort of monolithic style lands, right? Aside from maybe New Orleans Square and then eventually Toontown. But then you have this very single IP specific thing that's mixed in with these non-IP things. And I remember thinking at the time, like, how is that going to look on a map? It would make sense totally at Hollywood Studios. It would even make sense at California Adventure because they'd already done that with Bugs Land and Cars Land by that point. So thinking about where that would go and what that would look like, and I thought it would be Tomorrowland, honestly. And I think what's crazy is like the first time that I went to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and we can get into all this, Tomorrowland had more Star Wars attractions than Batuu at the time. So still in my mind, I'm like, oh, maybe it was Tomorrowland. But yeah, I don't think I was apprehensive. I just thought that they bit off more than they could chew at the time. That's really kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what made me a little bit apprehensive is that while I love Star Tours, and I might make a lot of enemies when I say this, but when I went to Walt Disney World and did the Indiana Jones stunt spectacular, I was so I'm the biggest Indiana Jones fan. Like, you can't see my posters. I've got Indiana Jones posters all over here. Indiana Jones is my favorite franchise. When it was like watching Crystal Skull. It's like, this is not Indiana Jones. This is something else, and I'm not.
It's a Waterworld stunt show.
This is a Waterworld stunt show, and it's all fake. It's all fake, right? Like, it's all like, this is not you immersing yourself in Indiana Jones. Like, this is us. And this is what the stunt people do. Like, I don't care what the stunt people do. I want to be in Indiana Jones. So I think that's what made me a little bit more apprehensive, is sort of the different approaches that they had taken in the past to putting IP out there. So it's really fascinating. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, for me, when I first heard it, I wasn't there like the cool kids, but I did see the announcement online, and I was the same thing. I was like, cool, where is that going to be? And yeah, like you, Matt, I was like, I guess like they get rid of Tomorrowland, but I feel like that's going to make a lot of people angry by, replacing a classic land like that with Star Wars. And then I was like, oh, I guess maybe they will do that, because they did like, I think it was like a Summer of Star Wars thing where there was like Star Wars posters all over Tomorrowland, and there was new characters walking around.
Path of the Jedi they introduced over in the theater, the Captain Theater.
So I was like, oh, maybe they're just like kind of testing the waters and seeing if people would be okay with there just being Star Wars stuff around. And then when they're like, no, we're going to nuke the back of Critter Country and put it there, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I was super excited though, just hearing that it was going to be an all Star Wars land. But once I started hearing about like the immersion and how it was going to be like its own little universe, tucked away within Disneyland, I was like, oh wow, I'm on board with that, and I'm going to get there the first day it opens by any means possible.
Now, did just out of curiosity, did any of you, because what they started to compare it to was the Harry Potter like immersion experience that they have at Universal, and I've never been to Universal's Harry Potter stuff, so I had nothing to like compare it to. I'd seen YouTube videos of it, but had you guys experienced at least that kind of immersion before?
I experienced the one in Hollywood, which I think is limited compared to the one in Florida.
It is. I've experienced both, and I did experience Orlando's version before Galaxy's Edge. So I actually did have high expectations. Hollywood is terrific, but I was so blown away by the reveal of Diagon Alley, because it is so practical, yet it is like so sudden that it gets like it takes your breath away. And the way everything outside Diagon Alley is set up to look like a boring London street, like something that you could easily pass by, which is the purpose. You turn two corners and then you get the Wizarding World. It was phenomenal. It was so cool. And I had high expectations of just the entry point to an immersive experience. Like, how can my breath be taken away right away? How can I feel like I don't feel like I'm at a theme park? I don't feel like I'm in Florida. It was a little hard to feel like I was in England in hot Florida, humid weather. Like for like 3 seconds, I felt like I was not in Florida until I remembered how humid it was. But that was a pretty high expectation I had from the beginning.
Yeah, and we'll get to our initial reactions into walking into Batuu pretty soon. Albie Madrigal says, I remember being at D23 during the reveal. So surreal, and never in a lifetime did I imagine stepping into a galaxy far, far away.
That energy was incredible in that room.
Yeah, talking to, because like, I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan, but I haven't even been around for as long as Star Wars has been around. I'm only 29.
Bragger.
So I was so I was like curious like how my dad was feeling, because he saw Star Wars day one in the theater, and I was like, how do you feel about this? Because this was just like a movie you went and saw years ago, and then like it's blown up into this thing, and now it's a thing you could walk into. And I actually got to take my dad, who hadn't been to Disneyland, I think, since like 2002 or something like that, and I brought him to Galaxy's Edge a little after it opened, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So we have the big announcement at D23, and then leading up to the actual opening of the land, we have all this like pre-launch lore build up in Star Wars canon. So as our excitement for Galaxy's Edge grew, we got to see little glimpses of the world we would eventually physically step foot in. Batuu and Blackspire Outpost are visited by Grand Admiral Thrawn and Darth Vader in the novel Thrawn Alliances. There's also a Star Wars Adventures comic featuring Hondo Anaka that sets up the premise for the Smugglers Run ride. And in the Disney parks themselves, there's a tease at the end of Star Tours. As we received more info and lore, was there any particular piece that got you even more excited for Galaxy's Edge? We'll start with you, Matt.
Yeah, I was actually just, going back to that time period, I was surprised that there wasn't more connectivity between the films and the land. I thought that they kind of missed an opportunity there, to be honest with you, compared to what they had done to tie together MCU stuff. And they've done such a great job at that, between even television properties and DVD properties and film properties. So I wondered what this land would be, because we hadn't, I wasn't that much into the comic books or any of that stuff. So for me, this was like, tabula rasa. I had no idea, what they were going to do. Honestly, leading all the way up until 2018 probably is when, friends in the Star Wars fandom universe started letting me know that this was going to be something on the outskirts. They announced Galaxy's Edge in 2017 at D23, and so we all got to speculate what that meant. So anytime anybody said Galaxy's Edge, I immediately thought of Tatooine, right? Because we're in the outer rim. Well, we've been to Tatooine, and so we've been to Tatooine on Star Tours. So like, what is that going to be? So all I could envision at the time, because I'm not George Lucas, is Tatooine. And where did we go in 2015? Jakku. So we're in Jakku and Tatooine in my mind. So that was the only thing like build up in my mind that I thought. But I immediately thought, well, they're going to have to do something with iconic vehicles. So because the vehicles are characters in Star Wars. So I assume we would see that, but there was no way to know if we were going to see the sort of Skywalker perspective of Star Wars or something totally different. And so I was still leading up to it. I still didn't know. And that's how I felt basically the whole time. Is it going to tie to the films or is it not?
Yeah. How about you, Natalie?
I think it was the sneak peek of Galaxy's, Batuu specifically on Star Tours, that really got me emotional. It was a very cool tie-in that I don't think many guests really understood when they saw it. Like when you really think about who's writing that, I know like half of that are nerds like us, our annual pass holders and our Star Wars fans that probably went that specific weekend when they heard that drop. But the other half are visiting families. Like they're people that are just there for fun and they didn't know, and they see like, oh, cool, like look at this cool looking planet. Whereas then there's me crying because I know exactly what that means. I think that was my favorite pre-launch lore buildup. But there was a really fun moment when we were watching Solo on opening day, because my fiance was on the test and adjust team. That was he was helping with the development of these attractions and would ultimately be an opening day cast member, which is so cool. So when L3 drops the line, you couldn't get from here to Blackspire Outpost without me, he like slapped my arm and was like, that's what it is. And that was, I think, for him, a very cool moment to see like what he's working on and what he'll eventually have fun. Like he'll get paid to play Star Wars. Like he saw that in in Star Wars. Like that had to have been such a cool moment for him to anticipate that.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, I'm probably the most negative one in terms of the pre stuff, and it's because if you go back in time, I grew up on the original trilogy. George Lucas then gave us the prequel trilogy, which for an original trilogy fan, given what you were given in that trilogy, and then growing older, the prequel trilogy is disappointing, right? Because it's even more so made for kids in many ways, and you don't realize that the original trilogy was too. You just were a kid at the time, right?
Yeah.
And so on the back end of that, I remember investing a lot of time and energy in the lead up books and novels to The Force Awakens. And that was a complete tease. Like there was nothing of interest in any of those books. It was like, there's a book that also references like what happened to C-3PO's arm to make it red. And guess what?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at all. Like, so from a storytelling perspective, right? Overarching, how do you take somebody and immerse them into the story? Well, I'm actually pretty disenfranchised with the way that you're immersing me in stories. And then when I talk to people around me and people online who have been Star Wars fans in the past, they're all pretty disenfranchised too. So I don't even know how to feel about these things anymore. It's very difficult because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but I can't go around and bounce off people who are like super hyped on it without hitting like a few people who are really upset about it. So for me, I just the whole time, the only thing that would get me hyped was I'm an annual pass holder. So being at Disneyland and being either on the train or riding a Thunder Mountain and coming up over the hill beside the goat and looking over and seeing like that looks crazy. And that's the only thing that would keep me out. Everything else was like, I don't know, are you going to give me C-3PO's arm again? Like, so that was what was cool to me, was seeing the actual construction being built. But I didn't trust some of the other stuff.
Yeah, like you, Natalie, I really dug seeing the tease at the end of Star Tours, and I went on it multiple times just so I could, because it's like, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe that you see it, just to like scan like the background and see what's there, and see like, oh wow, that looks like a gonk droid and a BB unit going by, and just trying to like see, okay, what can I glean from this, and is this going to inform how it's like really going to be? And I mean, some of that can't be. There's not any flying droids or anything in the actual park yet.
That was the thing yet.
Yeah, but yeah, but some of the pre-lore stuff, I think mostly it's, well, the one I mentioned, the Thrawn Alliance's book, where Thrawn and Vader go to Black Spire Outpost, and it goes into pretty good detail of kind of the surroundings and locations, Oga's Cantina, and other little locales around there. And so like,
please tell me that Thrawn ordered the drink at Oga's Cantina and they describe it.
No, they did not order any of the drinks off the menu. They might
like,
mention.
I'll have a fuzzy tauntaun, please. And they're like, oh
yeah, they might mention it. Yeah, they might. I have to go back and look, but they might have mentioned. I know in subsequent books they have mentioned stuff that is on the menu.
Really? Whenever the Star Wars special, they just mentioned Tip Yip.
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, there's some of the drinks. I think
nice.
I've had one of those. Yeah, but stuff like that kind of does it for me. I was like, oh, that's a place I'm going to go to. And so when I'm there with my family, I'm like, oh, like this is the same street that Darth Vader walked on, and like, oh, like when we're in the cantina, there's like these blaster holes in the wall, and we're like, oh, there was a fight in this one book that ended up ending in blaster fire, and it was between these two characters. You know, everybody's like, "What are you talking about? I'm trying to enjoy my drink. Who are you?"
Hey, can I say something really fast? Somehow, and I just
Yeah.
remembered this. Two things. You were talking about construction walls. Number one, I remember seeing an X-Wing from Slinky Dog in 2018. And everybody was like, oh, that doesn't fit in with the immersion of Toy Story Land. And other people were like, but it looks like a toy, you know?
Yeah.
So like you could see it.
It does.
Yeah, so like you could see that from a distance. So I remember a lot of speculation there. And then the other thing was, and I can't remember how I learned this, but somehow we knew that Captain Rex was going to be part of the land. That was something that was really exciting leading up to, I had no idea where he would be, but I don't know where that dropped or how we knew that in advance. But I remember seeing like he was on t-shirts and stuff like DJ Rex is going to be in Batuu coming soon.
That you can't talk about Galaxy's Edge
There he is.
without talking about there he is.
Yeah.
It's so good to see him again.
I love him.
Those
he's the best.
beats are awesome too.
How depressing was it when you'd walk through the queue of Star Tours after they'd taken him out and he was like down in a corner and you're like, oh, there he is. That's my buddy.
Not only was he just down in the corner, he's like malfunctioning.
He's like malfunctioning,
saying old lines from the old ride, and you're like, oh no.
He's still getting used to his programming.
What's fascinating to like tangent on that real quick is that we're seeing Rex before like he's actually the pilot, because the redo of that attraction takes us to an earlier time period from what I remember.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's a deep cut.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
You nailed it.
I always, every time I walk past him, I always see him as like still quite malfunctioning. Like he's not quite used to his programming yet, but at the ready to get installed to the new upcoming Starspeeder 3000s, because we're boarding Starspeeder 1000s in that. In the
Star
current
Tours did not do much of an interview process and check his resume. Like, what was your last job? You were like, you were a DJ at a bar? You can't fly planes, bro. You're out.
That's funny.
I think Star Tours is probably like just Southwest Airlines, probably of like the Star Wars universe. It's just kind of like a
Spirit
bus.
Airlines. Yeah, Spirit Airlines.
Yeah.
You like to purchase your fuzzy ton, hon? We don't give them away for free.
No. 2 bags though. 2 bags per passenger.
That's right. You know, I was gonna say though, what you mentioned, Matt. You mentioned like the t-shirts and stuff, and I can't imagine I know you're gonna get Nick to like our experiences walking in, but if you imagine Disney is releasing what is the equivalent of trailer upon trailer upon trailer, they're charging you for it, right? They're like, hey, do you want to buy a t-shirt of Galaxy's Edge, which you've never experienced before? And so the hype train on that and what you have to live up to as an Imagineer is unbelievable. I can't even imagine what you have to pull off to make all of us happy. Oh, I spent $200 on merch before I even walk into the land. Like, you got to be kidding me. That's crazy. So anyways, I just think that that's fascinating from a storytelling perspective of all these people working on this story, knowing that the people coming in have expectations that are sky high.
Yeah.
Just ask Ryan Johnson.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just ask Ryan Johnson.
So I mean, let's get into it. When you guys finally stepped into Galaxy's Edge, what was your favorite part about it, or what was your? I mean, we should start with like, what was your experience coming into it? I know for me it was crazy because it was the first day and felt like I was just in a sea of bodies, waiting to go into this land, and like I was, just standing in a sea of bodies for like 2 hours going, eventually I'm going to be able to walk. But we'll start with you, Natalie. How was it for you?
Oh, so I was able to go during a cast member preview because of my fiance.
No sea of bodies for you.
And especially more so because my experience was incredibly unique, that like I am just forever grateful how I was able to experience this for the first time.
Yeah.
But going back to my initial reaction to Diagon Alley, like I had high expectations of just a transition, and they were met. I know that another piece to like build up the release of this was John Williams composing a new theme for the land. Like, when has John Williams done that? And I love that theme so much. It is like quintessentially Star Wars, but it feels like it's written for like you individually, like your individual adventure. Like, it's so mysterious and powerful. So
it's your Star Wars theme song.
Yeah, it is, and that's got to be like the coolest thing ever. And walking in and you hear like the very like ethereal version of that tune, and it like sucks you out of Disneyland immediately. And you are on a different planet. You're not on Earth, you're not in the Milky Way galaxy, like you are in that galaxy far, far away. My initial reaction, or rather my initial experience, was unique because I was able to go in early, even before like the cast member preview started, all because of a very special surprise my fiance had for me. The experience had us walking around an empty Batu, which again, I don't know when I'm ever going to see that ever again. So I'm slowly walking by, getting pointed out that there's a special place in this corner where scrappers collect items to build lightsabers. Oh, look at the Ronto Roasters over here and the droid Spitfire. And turning the corner and seeing the Millennium Falcon was like one of the most powerful moments I have ever had. And it got better as we walk in, and I'm soaking in everything in the queue, and I see the Hondo Naka animatronic, which is out of this world. It is a phenomenal animatronic. Every time I go in now, I overhear guests like, "That's a person." No.
Yeah.
No. Like, it's just like the coolest thing to like see people guess.
Yeah. It's come a long way from Pirates.
So cool. Yeah, he's come a long way from Lincoln even.
Yeah.
And we board the Millennium Falcon. For those of you that have been on this attraction, like, you do go into the cabin and you're able to explore the cabin until you're called up to your task of piloting the Falcon. So while we're playing around, we were able to take photos. This is the coolest thing ever. And I should have gotten a hint of what was happening because there was also a photographer there. But we were taking pictures and just having fun. And we got pointed to a very specific corner of the Millennium Falcon. And it's very non-assuming to even most Star Wars fans, unless they have a keen eye. But for those who have Empire Strikes Back as their favorite film, they know it as like the most romantic corner of the Millennium Falcon, which is where Han and Leia kiss. So my fiance and I were posing for pictures there. And he said, like, "Hey, why don't you play with that lever, the one that Leia is not quite able to move in the movie?" So I do that, and I turn around, and my fiance is on his knee. And this is how he proposed to me. And it was I can't quite like describe how I felt, because like you only really get a moment like this once. I did not expect it whatsoever. You can see how shocked I was right there. But I immediately started asking, like, "Are you serious?" And then I turn around, I see all of the cast members, all the crew members of the Falcon, just like looking around the corner, seeing like how it went. And I just start crying, and I'm just like, of course. And it was the proposal story I never knew I wanted, but it was 110% the most perfect way to be proposed to. My fiance, going back to a Star Tours connection, my fiance worked at Star Tours. That was where he originally hired into Disneyland. And we were connected by mutual friends because they knew we loved Star Wars almost a little more than the average person out there. It wasn't just, oh, they had cool movies. We have a strong connection to these films, to these stories, for millions of reasons. And the fact that he had his team be able to create this moment and have us share it with a few of our like closest people in our lives was, again, like, it's the magic of Disney. It's the magic of Star Wars. And like hands down one of the coolest things ever. And I swear, if our future kids do not like Star Wars, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because our relationship completely evolves around these movies. I don't know how much more of an immersive experience I could ever get than this right here. It was just it was my perfect Star Wars story. Not even a proposal story, just like a perfect Star Wars story.
Did your fiance use any Star Wars lines in his proposal? Did he sneak anything in?
I actually didn't hear him. He didn't ask, will you marry me? He asked, will you be my co-pilot?
Oh, nice.
He had to retell me that like a few minutes later. Like I didn't hear it because all I saw was like him on his knee, and like I lost all sound. Like I just went out for a solid 10 seconds, I think. But no, I can't quite recall anything else he said, but the ring he gave me does have I love you, I know inscribed on it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's kind of his way of keeping that Star Wars line forever.
That is so cool. I love that story. And you're the first couple to get engaged in Galaxy Edge.
Among the first. We were in the last group of I think that was the last day of cast previews. So in the previous days, there had been a couple of proposals in front of the Millennium Falcon, which is very cool.
Yeah, I'm not in it.
Or as I know, yeah, we were the first in it, and possibly the only one so far in it, which was, again, very cool.
Yeah, they need to make that canon somehow.
Weird couple on a mission around just got engaged in that corner over there. I don't know.
How about you, Jay? How was it walking into?
You make me follow that.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah,
good luck.
So I was walking through holding Mark Hamill's hand, and so I think that with another co-host of the Story Geeks podcast, Justin Weaver. Actually, I went with him the second time. The first time I went with my wife. And I believe we'd just gotten back from a trip. We were both really tired. It was pretty crowded. And she kept turning to me and being like, how come you're not more excited about this? And I was really excited. I'm not like necessarily an emoter. Like I don't emote a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was cool, but it did feel like because of the reservations and because of needing to line up and like you said, like being just like crowded against everybody, I think that kind of stuff makes it more difficult for me. One of the things I really like being an annual pass holder is when Disney does location-based storytelling, like Disneyland. I have to be able to get the other things out of my space to be able to kind of immerse myself better. Otherwise, I pay far too much attention to the other people, and other people are definitely not immersive unless they're cast members acting these things out. And so for my first experience, I thought it was amazing, but I was much more interested in like, wow, how did they pull this off? Like walking through and being like, I'm blown away by the fact
trying to reverse engineer it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was almost too much for my brain to handle like emotionally. And so it's just kind of like logically, like how in the world did they pull off a Millennium Falcon that big? Right. Like that's not a normal Disney thing to do, particularly because a lot of times Disney will use force perspective, which I'm sure they're using here too. But it's like, oh yeah, that's probably a smaller version of whatever it is that I'm supposed to see. And it's just force perspective. This is like, they didn't pull any punches. I mean, it is like you are standing in front of the Millennium Falcon. And so I kind of approached it more from a standpoint of just kind of being in awe of the artistry of the setting that this story is going to now take place in. Then when I went with Justin, we went with two guys who had never been before. And one guy was like, he's like a low key guy. And he was like literally squeeing when he would walk around a corner. And I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like this guy. I'm not emoting that. So yeah, I think, but then later on when I got a chance to experience it without the same level of crowd and be able to just like walk in without having to wait for something to be let in. Those times I got to explore at my own pace. And that was when it really started to more so come alive for me personally. So it wasn't like I had to like go several times before I really felt more of the immersion that the story was trying to bring about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, it's been a slow. Thank you, Jay, for buffering the proposal story. I appreciate that. Quickly.
I did my best.
It's been kind of a slow burn. It's been a slow burn for me. I'm going to be honest with you. Before I went to Batuu, I went to Pandora many times, and so I can compare those two in my mind because you're talking about immersion and no one's mentioned that. So I'm just going to bring that out, to the surface. I love the transitions. It 100%. It feels like you're not in Disneyland. I don't know how they did that. I mean, that blows my mind. But then when I got beyond the transition, I got into the land. If you compare that in your mind to the kinetic energy, the organic space that James Cameron and Joe Rohde built, and compare it to this inorganic, unkinetic space of Batuu, honestly, it took a while for me to even be impressed because of what they had done at Disney's Animal Kingdom and how that land fits so well into the ethos of Animal Kingdom, conservation, reclamation, all that stuff. And so because Batuu is a blank slate, I didn't have any emotional connection to it in the same way that I would naturally have an emotional connection to an organic space like a park, right? With, tropical trees and, mountains and water rushing and things that you find here in the Ozarks. Like that stuff is amazing to me. And then to get to Batuu and for it to be so sterile, it was kind of like, Future World the first time you walk in there versus walking down Main Street USA. I mean, it just had that. It does. There's something different about that in your brain, and so I'm not trying to say that I don't love it or that I'm not impressed by it, but it was missing some elements that I had come to expect from Disney. So I'm just being truthful and honest with you.
Yeah. And
still, it's slow burning for me. I'm trying to figure out what it is that I love and what it is that is a disconnect for me.
Would you say, or would you agree with this, that maybe you felt like they leaned too heavily on kind of how George Lucas wanted Star Wars to feel really lived in, and used?
I liked that part. I felt like the rust on the wall and and things sort of falling apart, but not really. It felt like the scale was off for me. So the rest of Disneyland feels more intimate. Yes. New Orleans Square, Main Street, especially growing up in going to Walt Disney World, everything is smaller, right? And then you get into the First Order section, which is the area that I walked into, where the Millennium Falcon was, and everything was far apart, and there was no connection between anything, and there were no characters, and there was nothing moving. And so for me, it was like Future World in that sense. Everything was so spread out, and it worked. To me, it worked against it, except when you went to the marketplace and the Black Spire Outpost marketplace. That's where I really connected with it. And this is pre-Rise of the Resistance. There's nothing over in Resistance Forest, really. But that area, the connection you feel, I think, to people and to the environment, to the dangly, hangly things everywhere, and the rock work and all. I mean, that stuff is brilliant, and I absolutely was in love with that from the first moment that I went in. I probably took 500 pictures in there. I loved it.
I can definitely agree with what you're saying about the lack of kinetic elements to that. When I think Star Wars, I'm thinking flying ships, which they do their best to recreate with the sound effects. I love
those are so cool.
The ship does sound like it's flying just near you, but you still don't see it. And I think much more the kinetic movement could have been easily solved with droids, with people,
water,
Star Wars, water. That's what I thought of when you brought up Pandora. I thought those beautiful waterfalls that look like they're coming from nowhere. That is such a organic element to Pandora. And I absolutely immediately connected to what you mean when you mean kinetic energy. That is something that I absolutely agree we could see more of in Galaxy's Edge.
Here's the thing. I feel like it connected. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It connected well with Star Wars, just not well with me. It was in between.
The theme park experience as well.
There is something to be said for like when you compare something like Main Street to Galaxy's Edge, because I think you, Matt, just described in a much better way why it took me so long to start to like it better. Because a lot of times when you are in the themed lands of Disneyland, at least for me, it doesn't feel like I'm supposed to be in a story. It feels like I'm supposed to be escaping what would be my normal life, right? Into a place that is friendlier. It is more cartoony. It is more as the world should be, if you will, in many regards. And then you go and you immerse yourself in the story when you go on a ride, right? Like I love the Indiana Jones ride. I'm bringing up Indiana Jones way too often in a Star Wars podcast, but
still Lucasfilm, you're good.
Yeah, it's still Lucasfilm. It's still in the same framework. And in that ride, they literally take you through a queue where you're going towards the thing, and every step of the way, it's like, by the way, this is what's happening. By the way, this is what's happening. And from a storytelling perspective, they're doing what a writer would do in the early portion of a script or a book or whatever, where they're building this environment for you, but there is a story that you are going to follow along with. I think when you enter Batuu, what it feels like is like you've arrived and you're like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know where the story is or what I'm supposed to do here. And so I would say, to Matt's point, like for me, the moments, we're not going to talk about Rise of the Resistance because we don't want to get into spoilers, but the two moments where I felt more connected to Batuu were when I got into the queues for the big experience rides. So I'll just speak to Smuggler's Run right now, since we've all done that. When I got into the Millennium Falcon, or even just before that, when you're talking to Hondo Anaka and he's doing his thing, that was like, oh, I understand the story. I understand now what I am supposed to participate in. I'm not just going to wander around and be like, should I do something? Like, I should actually, like, now it's like, oh, this is the thing you are going to do. You have been given a task. And I will say that the land got a lot more interactive and a lot more interesting to me when co-host Justin, when he was like, hey, pull out your phone, go onto the app and play. Do the missions in the app. And then it was like, oh, I get it a little bit better. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm in this space. But otherwise, I'm 100% team Matt, that it took a while for me to get there.
I felt really bad. Like, people would ask me, and I'm like, I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm disparaging it. You know what I mean? But I think that, this is the world we're in. Like, if you're on a podcast and you say negative things, like, people will shut you down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I've been on record as saying that, oh, that movie is really good. And people go like, you hate it? Like, what? No, it's really good. Anyways.
It's really good, but for me, once I swam through the ocean of people, and actually got into Batuu, it was great. And like you guys said, even walking from, I went through Critter Country. I don't know if they had opened up another entrance yet, but this was like the first day. Went through Critter Country, so I'm hearing, the Winnie the Pooh ride is not that far away, and there's a restaurant right there, and so like there is some sort of magic that Disney's doing there, where it's like that slowly fades out, and then the Star Wars-ness kind of slowly fades in. And then once you're in there, you're not at Disneyland anymore. You're in Star Wars. And that happened pretty quickly for me, where about like, I don't know, like 30 minutes after being there, somebody mentioned something about like going on like another ride later from, going on like Indiana Jones. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm at Disneyland. I can literally just walk over there. Like, I was thinking like, oh, I'm on another planet right now. But like you, Jay, where you were kind of appreciating the artistry of it. I was looking around trying to see if like there was anything that I would recognize from films or TV or books or anything. And appreciating the littlest details of the restraining bolts that are on the droids, and certain battle droid heads that are being used as light fixtures on the wall, and seeing, especially in Doc Ondar's Antiquities, looking around and seeing all the creatures on the wall and recognize them. I was like, some of these haven't been in movies yet or before, and some of them only exist in the cartoons. And all the little, just scanning everything for all little Easter eggs and stuff. That's what I was doing mainly the first day I was there, is looking for something that's if you know, because some of the big things sort of wash over you and are kind of overwhelming, seeing the Millennium Falcon front and center as this full size real version is obviously whoa, that's incredible. But then even being inside the Falcon and seeing the helmet shield that Luke uses to train against the little training droid is in a box, and seeing when you're in the line, you're seeing sabacc cards and just other tiny little things that you would normally people walking by would go, oh, look, there's a laser gun, but it's no, that's not just any laser gun. That's Han Solo's laser gun. That's his blaster. So I got really sucked into all the little details, and then pretty quickly also the data pad, augmented. I don't know if augmented reality is the right term, but that sort of game where you're going around and doing little missions and getting credits and scanning boxes to see what's inside them, and doing little puzzles and stuff like that, listening to radio frequencies. I loved doing all that stuff. And then unfortunately, early on, it was a little hard to get into the cantina, so it took me a while
oh, that's right. Yeah.
to get in there. But I was able to do Smugglers Run. And I think actually the first stop that I made was for Blue Milk. I had to try that, and it was early May and it was pretty warm. So just having, I don't know if the warm weather kind of enhanced my joy of the cold beverage, but I was over the moon about it. I was like, wow, this is great. Blue Milk. Who would have thought it would actually be this good? Luke Skywalker, that kid is onto something. And they have green milk too, if you want to get that. But yeah, so I got kind of immersed pretty quickly, and then sort of my critiques of the land itself kind of came a little bit later. But let's jump into the next thing, because I'm really curious about this. One of the unique philosophies behind Galaxy's Edge is that you're living your own Star Wars story, and all the cast members are essentially characters in this story. And Black Spire has its own currency. If you want to go even immerse yourself further, you can put your credit card away, your cash away, and use Spira. That's what it's called, little gold Spira token. And there's alien foods and drinks, and you can literally now go and build a hefty full-fledged lightsaber, choose your own components and your own crystal. Did anybody have a personalized experience, and what did you think about it? I know I had one, and Nataly had probably the best one with her proposal. But was there anything did you interact with any characters? Did you do any particular missions on the data pad, or maybe just experience with a regular cast member? Did you have anything like that? Start with you, Jay.
Oh man, there wasn't. So I'm not a person that goes normally to interact with the characters.
Right.
Now, every once in a while, so mentioning Justin again, Justin and I have been to Disney, and he'll like be like, "Hey, come over here. I want you to check this out," because he's very familiar with the characters, and he'll like take me over to. We met Adora Milaje one time, and one of them, and she was phenomenal. Like I was blown away. But I don't normally go to those experiences, so it was weird for me and Batu because I can't remember what we asked. One of the cast members the first day my wife and I were there. And again, we just gotten back from a vacation like a few days ago, and it was an international trip. So we were super worn out. Yeah, it's super jet lagged. And I can't remember what we asked, but we asked some question and they had to answer us as if they were on Batu, right?
Yeah.
And we were just asking a very simple question, like, where's the bathrooms? You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, you know, and the way that they answered the question was just kind of like, oh man, can you just tell me what I want to know? Like, so I was like almost self-sabotaging a lot of those experiences because I don't normally do those kinds of things. And I wasn't necessarily looking for them to do that with me and have that kind of exchange. And I could tell a lot of the cast members really wanted to like interact with guests because they wanted to show off the fact that they knew all the different things that they were supposed to say. And I was kind of like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's fine. So no, I don't think there was any specific experiences that really blew me away. I will say that in the Disneyland environment, there is one cast member who plays Rey. There are multiple cast members who play Rey, but there is one that not only looks identical to Daisy Ridley, but sounds exactly like Daisy Ridley. Now, I've never interacted with her directly, but I've watched her interact with some of the kids and stuff, and I'm like, that's mind blowing that they're able to pull that off, because that's not you don't put she doesn't put a hat over her head or a mask over her face and then act like somebody. Like, she has to like be Daisy Ridley, which is who's acting as Rey. And so anyways, I will say that was pretty cool to observe that, but I didn't have any other moments that were super immersive in the way you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about because I did interact with her because I got a box of like kind of these magnet pins that were like different resistance ranks.
Oh, nice.
And so I put on my shirt like a resistance rank, and she thanked me for my service to the cause. And I was like, thank you. How about you, Matt? Did you have any kind of experiences?
Yeah, so I went to Oga's. I went to Doc Ondar's. I didn't go to the lightsaber ceremony.
Sabi's.
Yeah, I didn't go to Sabi's workshop. I wish that I had, but it was, I don't know if it was like at that point you had to make a special reservation or whatever. I was only there for like 2 days, so it was hard to do that.
And it was like it was pretty $200 or something, right? Like it was pricey.
Yeah,
it was.
I only went because somebody gifted it to me. But so
I think the tough part. Yeah, that's awesome. My mom did not get me that. I wish she had. It was my birthday too. What the heck, Mom? Anyway, so I don't know. Like, okay, so where Jay's at is kind of where I'm at, and I think it's harder to do. It's weird because this is a land set up for those experiences where characters in the land are supposed to play this role, and yet you don't really know anything about any of the characters, and that makes it hard to make that connection unless you do have to go to the bathroom or you do want to go to Oga's or whatever, right? And so I love this for cast members, just like I loved it for them on Star Tours, and shout out to Star Tours cast members who are awesome. And but I think the hard part is like, I don't know as a guest how I'm supposed to, beyond the pad and beyond the pay-to-play experiences, how I'm supposed to interact with them from an immersion standpoint. You know what I mean? Like that's always a challenge because this isn't Luke Skywalker. This is someone else in the Star Wars universe, which is awesome, but I don't know anything about them, so it's hard for me to connect with them. I think that's a challenge for Disney, and I think it's been a challenge in the land, honestly. I think the experiences are cool. I just don't know how to connect in that way.
Actually, let me give an example that I saw happen that I was blown away by. And I never would have ever thought to participate this way. There was a kid, this kid's probably like, I don't know, 11 years old or something like that, preteen, maybe early teen kid. And he was basically messing with the stormtroopers, and like he even at one point in time threw something at him. I don't know what it wasn't like something serious, like a big cup or something. And they were like, oh, there he goes, like go get him, and like they're chasing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's probably an amazing experience for that kid, but I would have never even thought to throw something at a cast member in any other place. I would have been kicked out of the park, and I would have had my whole thing revoked. You're banned for life. And so I think a lot of it is at my stage of life, it's difficult for me to know. And that's why getting on the rides helps me out, because then I know like this is my place in this story. Otherwise I'm sitting there going like, I don't know what my place is here.
Right.
A little bit of structure.
I'm just an observer now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Need more structure. Yeah.
That's really, really interesting to me, because I'm not super outgoing, in normal life and stuff. But when I was told like this is a land where you can live your own Star Wars story, for some reason, whenever I go there, like I become outgoing to like the cast members and characters and stuff. I don't know why. It's kind of sad. But but yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just jump into my story, and then we'll go to you, Natalie. But so I had multiple experiences. I had a very quick one, like I said, with Rey, where she just acknowledged me. I acknowledged her. We took a picture and went on. Same with like Chewbacca. I was walking around, took a picture with Chewbacca. And it's great I love seeing kids interact with Chewbacca, because like Chewbacca is like super sweet with like little kids and stuff. But one time I went, I don't remember which time it was, but it was still pretty early on in the launch. There's a character walking around in an orange jacket. Her name is Vi Marathi, and she's got blue hair, or like blue streaks in her hair. And I had read a story that she was in before the land had opened, so I knew a little bit about her. And we were walking toward like kind of the First Order area, and there's like there's an arch. And she was kind of walking my way, and I was kind of like stepping aside to like let her go by, and she stopped and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm good. Aren't you? Your name's Vi Marathi, right?" And she's like, "You know my name?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Cool, cool. Listen, can you make a Wookiee sound?" And I was like, I mean, I don't know, probably not as good as the Wookiee himself. And she's like, "Cool, okay. See those First Order stormtroopers over there? Why don't you go give them like your best Wookiee sound, and I think they'll give you something for it." I was like, "Okay." And so I go over to them. They're like, I don't know, like 10 feet away, and it's me and my brother and my wife and a friend of ours, and we all just like do like this, like our own Wookiee sounds in front of these First Order stormtroopers, and they stop and look at us, and like just like frozen, like, "What are you guys doing?" And then we turn and look back at Vi Marathi, and she's gone. So she was using us as a distraction to get away from the First Order, which I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And then like a month later, I came back and I saw Vi Marathi again. I was like, "I'm gonna go tell her that she got me in trouble with the First Order the last time I was on Batuu." So I go over to her and I go, "Hey, you got me in trouble last time with the First Order." And she goes, "Really? I don't know. That doesn't sound like me." I was like, "No, really, like I have a picture of you and everything." And she's like, "Let me see your data pad." And I gave her my phone, and she's looking at like pictures of herself on my phone. And she's like, "I don't know. I don't see the resemblance." And then she proceeded to take us on like this 20-minute long mission where like she had us follow her, and then there would like be First Order stormtroopers walking by, and she'd have us like kind of block her with our bodies while she like kind of ducked down, and when they would pass, we'd move on. And she would have us do like a particular mission on our data pad where we had to like scan certain things along the way, and as we were doing that, we had to like hide her, and then she would say, okay, you go talk to that officer over there, and you go talk to that stormtrooper. I need you to get like this information. I need you to tell me why they're looking for Chewbacca. And so like we had to like go and do those things and report back to her. And this all kind of culminated into her being cornered by like the First Order. And then she had like us like start chanting like rebellion, you know, until like everybody around us was like shouting at the stormtroopers. And then they like took Vi Marati away in binders, you know, off presumably backstage, I guess, or to prison. And to me, that was one like the most unique experiences I've had at Disneyland or any amusement park, where I was just like literally taking on like this quest, you know, it was like a video game, or going around. We went through the whole land, like all of Batuu, on this like quest with her. And like that, it's just always stood out to me as like one of the most fun times I've had on Batuu. And I look forward to like what else they come up with, you know, in terms of like little immersive experiences like that. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't like go up to her and just start talking to her. Nice. But like I could totally see where like you go and you don't know that you can do those things. But I just decided to test it to see how far it would go, and turns out you can actually go pretty far.
Let me ask you this question: all around the proverbial table that we're all on different tables. Yeah. When you grew up, so Matt and I are around the same age, right? When I started video gaming, I did not do this as like expansive world concept. That came a lot later in my history of video
open world
gaming.
Stuff.
Yeah. Was that something that it just feels like you're in sort of that kind of experience and you can just go up to the characters and kind of start those experiences? Because I would never have thought to do that kind of thing at all.
I guess that's just in my mindset, like because I have played those things, like, you know, Elder Scrolls stuff, Zelda, just, you know, you see a character and like, oh, they look interesting, go talk to them.
Yeah.
I don't do that in real life, but I think because I thought of this experience as kind of like a big game, and at some points it literally is on your phone, I would subconsciously or just lock into that, and it just makes me go up to, you know, Kylo Ren and say, what's up? Why are you so sad? You know?
Why are you so angsty, bro? What's happening?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That may be part of it. I wonder if it's like,
there he is.
You know, we have this experience where all of our growing up was getting immersed into these games where they put you into the story going this way. And so
linear.
It's very linear. And you have this experience. It's like, oh no, I'm in this. This is a game. I'm just a character in the game, and those are player characters, or non-player characters, and I'm going to go ask them for things, and then they're going to do something, right? I don't know. It's interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, I recommend it. And I'm sure like once, you know, the New Republic lets people back into Batuu, you know, they'll have more things you can do like that. But Natalie, other than like your super awesome proposal, did you have any other experiences?
Similar to you, like I have fun interacting with the characters on planet. Chewbacca is really fun to interact with, this, and especially to like you, Jay and Matt. Like if you're hesitant about those interactions, Chewbacca is like the most perfect one because he doesn't really have much to say at the get-go. One amazing example was I was at Galaxy's Edge with my friend Brian, and we happened to come across R2-D2, who started to make appearances just before the park closed, and that was a pretty cool thing to see. Yeah. And Brian was able to go up to R2, and his droid handler said, like, hey, R2 actually has a very special mission for you. Find Chewbacca. The message is beep, beep, boop, bop. Like, that was actually and I kid you not, we're like, you know what? We're waiting for, like, our turn to be called up for Rise of the Resistance, and we found Chewbacca about 10 minutes later, and I was able to like capture a 10-second interaction that was just like so perfect. And it's Brian going up to Chewie and saying like, "Hey Chewie, I have a message from R2," and he reacts with like this urgency of like, "Oh, what is it?" and like listens in, and you can hear like Brian going like beep beep pop boop, and Chewie like perfectly acknowledged like, "Oh, okay, I got it," and then he kept going, and it was just like a short, simple, sweet interaction that was like so much fun. Where I'm also hesitant about meeting characters, Jay. Like, I'm not one to go to Disneyland and wait in a line. Meet characters. I've started to break that a little bit with the Marvel characters. I definitely did that when Darth Vader and Chewbacca showed up at Star Wars Launch Bay. But it's much easier to have these fun little moments in Galaxy's Edge when they are walking around, and it is a lot of fun. It does give me more of the sense that I'm a part of the story, that I am a character on Batu. And
you look like a character there.
Something I have fun is similar to Disney bounding. I love Batu bounding, so just try to pick like clothing that looks as possible out of my closet, and that's probably got to be the best outfit I've ever made out of my closet. But going back to these cast member interactions, like similar to you, Jay, I have gone in there and I just want to ask like where the bathroom is, and I do get like a little longer winded of a story. And I know the average guest, when it comes to certain questions, they just want the answer right away.
Right.
And that's okay. But I remember it was the cast member preview. I was buying a little object. I cannot even remember what the souvenir was. But I was being rung up by this very soft-spoken cast member, and she was very gentle and very sweet. When I finished the transaction, she handed me my bag in this like a very like ethereal way. She said, "May the spires keep you." And I don't know why that gave me goosebumps. Like it was like a very, again, short, simple interaction. And I think those can be perfect immersive examples for the very average guest, for the guest that doesn't know who Vi Moradi is, who has not read all of these books, who maybe have never seen a Star Wars movie. Like that is a very high probability when coming here. And we do have to like find that balance of, you know, Galaxy's Edge has to cater to us who have high standards of theme park experiences and Star Wars, and the guest that's there for a day and may not come back for several years. So these immersive experiences are they're very important. They're very powerful. If done right, they can leave an impression even if they last 5 seconds. But for those that have not gone to Savi's workshop, I think that is by far the most incredible immersive experience, without counting the ride experience of the attraction. Savi's was beautifully intimate. I think, Matt, like what you were looking for, that intimacy, that immersive experience, that is what I felt in there. It is a very immersive experience within an already immersive experience. The way it is timed, it doesn't feel rushed. It feels organic. And yeah, I definitely came out of there crying. Like it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And they made what is essentially a retail transaction. You're buying a lightsaber. They made it this 25-minute emotional experience. And I think only Disney has the capability to pull something like that off.
Yeah.
I think that I watched the YouTube video on Savi's workshop, and I was pretty blown away by that experience. But again, I didn't want to pay $200, and so it was kind of like I think that would have actually been something that people like Matt and I.
You didn't want to pay $200 for this?
I would do it.
Thing that sits on my bookshelf.
I'm excited to do it. I can't wait to give him my $200.
I talked to a friend of mine who is an angel investor, and so this is a person who gives a lot of money to various things and stuff like that. And she goes, I go, "Oh, did you do the lightsaber experience?" And she looks at me and she goes, "Those aren't collector's items. I'm going to go in and buy Luke's saber in the store because that's a collector's item." And I went, "Oh, that's an investor mindset. There you go. Good job." Yeah, but no, I think that those kinds of experiences, the more you can have those kinds of experiences, the more the land comes alive for you. And I think basically what we're describing is that kind of when we're the person who has to initiate the experience, that does not come natural to us. Which is a very different thing. It's very, very different, because storytelling is such where, I'm waiting for you to say, come into the story and here's what the story is. I think what you just described, Nick, is you said, I'm very familiar with, I'm in the story, and now the story is a choose your own adventure, right? And I can go to these various characters and they're going to do different things. I can initiate a storytelling event. And that's a very different type of storytelling, which is really fascinating to me. So very cool.
Yeah, I've got one more question here. I'll also open this up to everybody. So with the Star Wars Hotel on its way, an experience that completely cuts you off from the world and fully immerses you into the galaxy far, far away. What do you think the future of this kind of experiential storytelling holds? Like, do you think we're going to go full Westworld eventually? Or or are we going to go some other route? I know I'm excited for Star Wars Hotel. I don't mind being cut off from daylight, obviously, for days at a time.
I don't know if we'll see full Westworld in our lifetimes.
Yeah,
but I know it'll happen. Who knows how long?
Mm-hmm.
Well, to give you a little bit of a, I won't answer the hotel question yet. I'll let Matt tackle that. But just to give you a little bit of a feel for how much the world has already changed, my wife and I saw a trailer or a little clip of the Polar Express movie, and it was mind blowing because it does not look realistic at all. And it has not been that long since that came out. And if you go watch I'm thinking of Call of Duty Black Ops, where they've got the Ronald Reagan character, and for about 3 seconds of that trailer, you're like, that's a real person though. And so I think that if we are going to get to the Westworld type of thing, I'm not sure that it's going to be the you walk into Disneyland and then that takes place. I think it's more likely to be an experience like they were delivering at the Void, where you go full immersion into a VR set, and that's where you're actually experiencing that kind of thing. And we just need the technology to get to a place where we see it as being ultra realistic. So anyways, I like, what I'm wondering about is like, because this, to me, like the idea of this hotel is as far as anybody's gone outside of like you said, like the Void VR, and which requires a lot of computing power and just kind of space for you to walk around. But this is the kind of thing where it's like literally they're putting you in some place that's got no windows, no actual windows that look outside. And like I'm curious like how like you, Jay, and Matt would do in a place like that if they're gonna go at it the same way they kind of do with Galaxy's Edge, where it's kind of like you kind of choose what you want to do. They're not gonna like unfold anything for you. Again, I don't know how they're doing it, but like I can see, spending a lot of money to stay there and go like, I don't really get this, for some people.
So there's a Titanic museum in Branson, which is the hillbilly Las Vegas of the Midwest. And they have you tour the Titanic, and the guys who set up this museum are the guys who actually toured the Titanic in the little, Snorks boat or whatever, like DuckTales like. And so this is their baby, and you go in there and you look for artifacts based on someone who was actually on the Titanic, right? And this is this one little small thing they do so that when you go through the museum, you're connecting these pieces of the museum to this person. And then at the end, it reveals who this person is, right? That is a very easy way to engage people who don't engage well in an unstructured environment. So there's that. Cool. Yeah. So going back to Nick's thing where he's approaching the character, I think guys like Jay and I or whomever need someone to approach us and say,
Yes.
these are 5 things that you can do if you want to do this at 4 p.m. today or whatever, right? It's something that you can set up the same way that you set up Jedi Training Academy, where you meet with someone, but then they put you on some kind of mission for the kids. And I think that's fantastic for the kids, by the way. My son just loved that. So going back to the Star Wars Hotel, I think that's an easy place for me to engage because it is intimate and the rooms are intimate, where tech is involved. AI via big tech right now is doing things that you and I aren't even conscious of. Like the way that you can say, hoverboard, and then 4 hours later you see an ad for that on your phone. Like that's not a person on the other end of your phone listening. That's AI. So the more AI is involved in these experiences, the less people will be, and the more customizable they'll be, and the more Westworldy it will be. So I'm not saying that Star Wars Hotel is Westworldy. Will we go full Westworld? We won't in our lifetimes, as Natalie, I think, mentioned, but it's coming. And I don't know if everyone will want to do it, but those experiences are there, just in the same way that people, if they want to go, and I don't want to condone this, but if they want to go hunt big game in Africa, they can. They can pay to play. And I think the same thing could be true for people who want to immerse themselves in what other, I don't even know what world they want to go into, Game of Thrones or whatever. And I don't know that it's necessarily VR. I think it's more like, so you've watched Mandalorian and you see these real-time renderings of what's happening on that Mandalorian screen. I think that's more tangible, and that is the wave of the future.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
do agree. I do agree with Matt that for people like us, the things like the hotel will actually be easier, because I think that Disney will have an easier time. Look, you're having 10,000 people go into the land. They can't initiate with everybody, right? They have to wait for people to initiate. But the hotel is a controlled experience, and they can staff the hotel staff to the number of guests who are there, and they can say, go prompt this experience with this guest, right? And they can do that based on, like you're saying, Matt, like they're going to pick up data that, Jay found the thing under the bed, so then go prompt this experience with Jay. And that kind of stuff is like, oh, that's unbelievable. So I think that we will more easily be drawn in with that type of experience than having to create our own story, right? Because they're going to be creating it for us based on the prompts where we will be. That's at least my thought process on it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I want them knowing that I found something under the bed.
Yeah.
It might just be a part of the contract going in.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Bob Iger will see everything you do in your hotel room.
He already does.
He already does.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, Disney's doing like so much in the realm of Star Wars, so many cool experiences like that. I mean, I never thought I'd see a Star Wars land that I could walk into, and now I have done it like several times. And I never thought there would be a whole hotel themed after Star Wars, and now there is. And I'm sure I'll go bankrupt just trying to get into it. But I guess we'll wrap things up here for our Galaxy's Edge podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Matt, thank you for coming on. Natalie, Jay, Matt, if people want to see more from you, where would you point them toward?
Oh yeah, so I currently have 2 podcasts. One is Disney History and Disney Listery, and that's on the 3028, or boy, it's really hard to find, 3028. You'll find it if you just search iTunes. And then Wedway Radio is my old standard. My brother and I founded that podcast in 2008, and we still populate the feed.
Nice.
Every week or every other week with Disney history or some other sort of Disney information based on history. And so that's what we do. So if you want to hear more from me, that's where you can find it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I'm a longtime listener of Matt's podcast, and I love Matt's podcast.
Thank you.
They're correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have done probably several episodes, but I remember distinctly you guys talking about and I might mispronounce it, but like didactic sound versus like you did a whole sound episode with and I will tell you, because I didn't mention this earlier, but my wife and I have, after listening to that episode and just being more aware of the sounds around me, because I didn't even realize that, like, Natalie, you talked about the soundtrack that was created for Galaxy's Edge. Well, that soundtrack isn't the thing that's it's not playing while you're walking around like you might experience Disney music, because Batuu would not have that music playing in it, right? And so my wife and I, we've tested this out, to your point, Nick, earlier. We've actually gone step by step from Critter Country to Batuu, going, what can you hear? What can you hear? And it's like 4 steps, and you hear one land into the next land, and it's completely ridiculous. So just a shout out to Matt's podcast, because they will go deep into some of that kind of stuff, where it's like, how are the Imagineers putting these experiences together? Right. And what do those things mean? So definitely go check it out.
Thank you. Yeah. Sometimes the Imagineers are on to tell that story themselves, which is always good.
That's fantastic. I love that. I love the Imagineering documentary that came out on Disney Plus. Recently. So thank you guys. Thank you for watching. That's it for today's show. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more geek content and hit the bell for notifications. And we'll see you on the next show. Rising moons, everyone.
Oh, well done. Well done.